and what particular hour there is a rise in spike and that thing. So for example, like I have already spoke about this thing, like if there is a Black Friday sale, definitely the product has a huge discount like 70 to 80% the price normal to MRP price, the market price. There is a huge discounted price. Suppose you have a product called you get a product in 1,000 rupees, then on that particular day if you get 70% off, then definitely you get the product in 300. So definitely there is a boom and a rise in user because everyone wants to purchase that product and have it. So normally the application might have a sudden rise in spike, and if our application is not capable of that particular thing, then definitely our server might crash and there is a lag in the performance of that particular time. So as a business owner, I uh, definitely I don't want that particular scenario to happen. So I will try to replicate that particular thing in our test environment and make sure we tune our application accordingly. And although there are multiple methods to calculate the spike load, which a business analyst must aware. So normally a performance tester has a responsibility to design the workload model as per spike test requirement. So I think for a new application, this is definitely not, this is an optional test, and it's according to the business. If our client wants to perform this kind of scenario, then definitely a performance tester has to design the workload modeling accordingly to simulate the same kind of behavior. And for a new application, definitely we don't have a production data or a historical data. So we normally don't use this kind of spike test. For your knowledge, I wanted to ensure that you have a basic idea about all kind of tests, so making sure you understand this thing. So I am demonstrating each and every topic. So let's just see, like some words. Constant spike, constant spike load is applied to the server after a certain interval. So we have seen the in this thing, after a certain interval there is a rise in spike. So definitely we can relate by saying, like, suppose if you go for an interview, definitely they would expect a answer, and you have to say accordingly, and you have to justify that you have done the constant, like constant spike. What are the types of spike test? Means definitely you have to say constant spike, random spike, and step up spike. So if they ask you like what is constant spike, then you have to say in a certain interval of time there is a rise in spike. A random spike. So we can say that a random spike load is applied to the server at a random interval of time. And here we can say a gradual increase in spike load. So definitely, if they ask you step up spike test, then there is always in a when we see this graph and analyze this thing, there is a gradually our user count is increasing at a certain interval of time. Our time is also increasing. With that, our count is also increasing. This way, we can because we can define that a gradual increase in spike load applies to server at a certain interval of time. So for a new application, normally we do not perform spike test. But for old application, check with BA and get all the production or historical data. BA uses some mathematical algorithms to define the pattern. Performance tester have to design the workload modeling by the referring the NFR document. So after getting all the things, like normally this is the thing we follow, and we have to come up with an approach for spike testing. So now, like, let's see what is the purpose of spike test. Definitely the purpose of spike test. Definitely we want to see the sustainability of the application at a sudden huge spike. Like if there is a sudden rise in spike, we have to see our application is able to sustain or not. So definitely, first is sustainability. So definitely, under a huge rise in spike, our application is able to sustain or not. And we must see that for every kind of performance test, our response time must not deviate, or response time is not breached. It is under SLA. SLA, which I already spoke about in my previous classes, that is service level agreement. They give some service level agreement. Suppose for every transaction or every transaction must be less than 5 seconds, or every critical business flows or must be loaded in a 5 seconds. So that's the reason they're telling the response time should not breach in our test while we perform the test. And definitely, if we are performing any kind of spike test, load test, stress test, soak test, then our there should be a minimal failure percentage. They give some 1% of total transaction, or let's see 0.5%. and we have to see if there are errors. Oh, if there are errors, then what particular time error occurs, or the pattern of the error. So definitely, if there are errors, then what particular time our error occurs and the pattern of that error. We have to see the response code as well, like whether it is a 4xx error or 5xx error. So once we observe some kind of bottlenecks, once we observe some kind of bottleneck, then definitely we must, then definitely there is some lag in the application behavior, and we must find out the downtime and our server is able to, or like once we observe some kind of bottleneck or some lag in the application behavior, then there is some kind of like downtime, and yeah, our server will not be available or some kind of thing, and that time our servers, after it should perform, like if we tune the application well, then our server will recover fast. If we tune our application well, then our server will recover fast. And whenever we run any kind of performance test or any kind of NFT test, we make sure our resources are not breaching. It is server resources are not breaching. CPU, disk, network, memory. So these are the components, like, so normally, like this whenever we perform any kind of test during the NFR gathering, we take this kind of data, and our client expect that CPU must not be CPU should be less than 50%, less than 60%. Disk should be minimal or optimal use. Network should be given with full bandwidth, and so that there is no delay in the network. There is not much delay in the network, and our memory is not much more than 50 or 60%. So these are the factors they decide. Now, like, I'll just tell you how can you approach, like what will be your approach when you when your client asks you to perform a spike test. So definitely at that particular time, just just a second. So our approach is like, uh, we, as I told you, this is an optional test for a new application, but for the old application, if you find out any kind of trend in the uh, application for the production environment, but if you observe that kind of trend, then it is unavoidable. We have to perform this kind of test, and we have to start our investigation as well. During the investigation, the same scenario we have to simulate and in our production test environment and identify the root cause. So once we identify the root cause and the issue, definitely the code gets fixed, and again the code will be moved to the live environment so that we don't face any kind of issue in the production environment. To handle the same situation in future, a spike test perform in the normal our NFT environment, which is test environment, and then tune the application accordingly. Like a performance tester always have to prepare a workload by referring to the spike test NFR, which I already discussed, like by in my previous slide. The performance tester has to design the workload model by referring the NFR document, and my NFR must have a defined base load and spike load to accurately perform the behavior. To accurately perform the behavior, we need this kind of data. Ideally, during the duration of the spike test is 1 hour. Normally, spike test is 1 hour. Or normally, like stress test or load test, this test also have a duration of 1 hour. Like, and in 1 hour we have to give sudden we have to follow whatever patterns it is observed in our. So whatever behavior or patterns we observed in production, we have to simulate that kind of test in our NFT environment, so that we cannot ignore this kind of behavior in our production, or so that we have to simulate this kind of test in our. So definitely we have to follow a approach or pattern testing. Let's say uniform or random or step up. What pattern it is observed, we have to simulate that same behavior in our test environment. And in this approach, response time should not should not be high. So coming to this thing, like our response time is not high, and our application, uh, so this all things we have seen, and we have come to a point that now I hope so that you have got a better idea about this thing. So let's take a controller where we actually design that thing. So let's see. So like yesterday I have shown you for endurance test. Let's simulate the same behavior for spike test. Let's see. We have 10 users ramping every 3 seconds. Suppose we are ramping all the users in a gradually, and we want to perform, and in this point at between there is a rise in spike. Suppose, so you could observe that there is a rise in spike, and they are, so you, this is some kind of behavior we observed. Instead of 30, I will just put 10. So definitely you can see this, there is a rise in spike. So you could see there is a in this graph, the user started uh, so you could see this gradually 10 users started, and at that this particular time it is running for, and there is a sudden rise in spike, and a few users again exited from the application, and again there is a high in spike. If suppose again here you observe one more spike. So this is the pattern, some kind of pattern you are observing. And so see there is a rise in spike. So when the normally the users logged in, they have some few ramp up, and steadily it is running for some 5 minutes, and after that there is a sudden rise in spike of 30 users, and again again some few users exited, and so there it is running for 5 minutes, and then again sudden there is some pattern, and users exited, few users exited, and again all the users exited smoothly. So this kind of behavior, if we observe in the production data, or then we have to perform the similar kind of test, uh, similar kind of test in our NFT. So I think you might have got a better idea about spike testing. Normally most we don't consider this kind of test. Normally we don't observe this kind of behavior in our production environment. Normally during the peak hours only there will be rise in spike. So suppose their business hours, or during the any sale, we observe this kind of thing, or any online sites, like a bigger application will have this impact. So definitely if we observe this kind of behavior, then we have to replicate this kind of test in our NFT environment. So I think you guys have a good clarity about this. So that's it for the class. Today we have covered spike testing, and follow the video thoroughly so that you understand the topic, or understand this particular type of test. And for the next class, we'll look into other type of test, and hope you guys have understood. And if you don't understand it properly, then please reach me out, and definitely I'll be helping you guys. So let's just wrap the class, and thank you guys. Thanks for joining the class. Have a great day.